It's a great honor to represent the program at the conference this past spring break and to present to you guys today. My name is Dante. I'm a senior in sport management.
I'm Matthew. I'm also a senior at sport management.
I'm Reagan. I'm a sophomore in studying mechanical engineering.
I'm Alex. I'm a sophomore. I'm studying multimedia journalism but minoring in sports management.
All right, so what is SABR? SABR stands for the Society for American Baseball Research. Here, some of the top baseball minds come together and share their research and just talk about baseball. We had the opportunity to listen to some great guest speakers like Carlos Pena and Eduardo Perez, who are former players, Kyle Bodie, who's the founder of Driveline Baseball, John Dewan, the co-founder of Baseball Info Solutions, and many other award-winning authors, researchers, and team employees.
So this was the 8th annual case competition held on by President of SABR, Vince Gennaro. We had 3 judges in our room that we presented our case to. One was from the San Francisco Giants, second was from the Cleveland Indians, and the third was from the Arizona Diamondbacks. They all worked in their respective front offices. And we were given one case for 1 week to prepare a 20-minute presentation in front of these judges.
So as Alex said, 1 week prior to the conference, you're sent out a prompt. Our prompt was approximately 5 pages long, so we just took a quick summary of it here. And so for last year, the prompt had to do with optimizing pitching and we developing a plan for a specific team in the MLB. So the main problem that we saw here in the MLB was that innings were not being allocated effectively or efficiently enough throughout the MLB, and that the value of a strong reliever has really been increasing over time due to the fact that starters have been pitching less and less over the years. So with this problem, we have a unique capability to develop an advantage for your team throughout the MLB because no one truly knows what the best amount of innings or the allocation of innings is for each of their individual pitchers. So we decided to make our own stat. We called it RAPO.
Hey, hold on. You're jumping ahead.
Am I?
So in this study, before we got going, we had to create some assumptions to follow in our projections. So the first one is that there's no injuries. Injuries are very largely unpredictable. And so it's very difficult for us to project who will get injured when. So for all of our statistics, we just assumed that they would not get injured that season. With transactions, we had to pick a certain period in time in which the rosters were set because they're constantly changing. So we picked end-of-season rosters. This influenced our projections because a lot of moves were made at the trade deadline or at other times that would influence that. And with inning counts, a lot of pitchers have been used in different roles based on injury history or durability throughout the season. But we kind of just had to force people into certain molds to fit our model the best that we could. And with this roster selection, we looked at every MLB team roster and picked pitchers based on how they've been used in the past to best fit that new role. I'm going to pass around our booklet. It's like 70 pages. It goes over every MLB roster. We created 3 pitching plans for their entire roster and how those pitchers would be used with those different plans.
So here, coming into how we approached our problem is that we decided to make our own stat. We called it RAPO, standing for runs allowed per outing. And to create this, we decided that we could not use earned runs, but rather runs allowed by each pitcher. This helps represent a more accurate representation of how the team's performance was overall last year. We calculate the runs per inning multiplied by the innings pitched for each pitcher, and then the length of a pitcher's outing depended on which plan we decided the team best fell under. So to create the stat, we used our public pitch count data that was available to us last year to create our projections. We couldn't use inning splits because we aren't using pitchers as they normally appeared in games last year. We decided to have some relieving pitchers become an opener pitcher, and we have no data for that, so we had to come up with our own. And then in 2018, the average inning took 16.2 pitches, and pitch data is only available in 25 pitch increments. So for each different plan, we had to create our own formula that allowed for us to use those 25 pitches.
So here's your traditional plan. This is what has been going on for years. You got your classic 5-starter rotation. They start the ball game out, and then your 8-reliever bullpen, usually a closer, a long reliever, setup guy, whatever you have. And then the average MLB start in 2018 was 5.4 innings.
Okay. So to calculate this, we took the 5.4 inning runs allowed per inning for outing for that pitcher, and then we just took an inning, 1 inning average for all the relievers, because relief pitchers are used in a variety of different roles throughout the season. Someone can be used for a few innings one day and then brought in to be a closer the next day. Not every team has one established setup man or closer. So because of that wild fluctuation in their usage, we just found it was the best to create an average. So we took that 5.4 innings plus the bullpen average and then multiplied that by 32.4 games, because a 162 game season divided by the 5 starters is 32.4.
So here's our second plan. We call it the Rays plan because this was the projected 2019 plan for the Tampa Bay Rays. They have 3 starters like you see in the traditional fashion, but the other 2 days are opener days. Now, openers are basically when you start the game off with a relief pitcher instead of your classic starting pitcher to face the top 3 batters, because technically, if data has shown that the top 3 batters are the most prolific in the lineup, so you want to face kind of your best pitchers matchup-wise against them on a daily basis. So you'd have your opener pitcher, then we have our bulk pitcher, again, 5.4 innings for the average start of last year, and then the 2.6 innings for the rest of the bullpen, which is a 6-reliever bullpen.
And one thing we do want to point out is that in an actual plan like this, the relievers and openers are interchangeable, but to create projections based on those different appearances in different innings, we just set 2 guys as being openers. So for this calculation, we use the same 5.4 inning Rapo for the starter/bulk guy. They use that term bulk pitcher for someone who's normally a starting pitcher who comes in after an opener, but they fill that same role. The openers were the same as the relievers, but instead of taking an average, we just used that 1 inning for each of their appearances, and they were slotted with the bulk guy for that day. And then the bullpen was the same as before with that average of all of them. So the bulk plan is completely different. We eliminate starting pitchers altogether. So instead of having 5 guys who are going 5.4 innings, our vision is to have 6 bulk pitchers with a cap of approximately 50 pitches, but they're on a 3-day rotation. So they're throwing the same amount of pitches and innings over the course of a season. It's just kind of laid out differently. So in this plan, you have the 3 openers and then the 6 bulk pitchers, and then you have a 4-reliever bullpen that you get the average for. Once again, just like the Rays plan, there would be some movement between who's an opener and who's in the bullpen to kind of distribute those innings more evenly, but we didn't account for that in our projections. So with this calculation, instead of the 5.4 innings, we used 3 innings for all of the bulk pitchers, and then added that with the opener for that day, their 1 inning performance, and then an average of the bullpen for the 4 guys that are left.
So after we collected all of our data and created the projections for each team, we put them into their respective columns. So we believe that 10 teams fit better off into the traditional plan, 5 best fit into the Rays plan, and the remaining 15 into our own bulk plan. The numbers next to each of the teams represent the number of wins that they would have gained using that strategy, except for the traditional plan, which those number of wins that we have listed would have actually came if they used our bulk plan. But as a team, we decided that if you're winning 3 games or less over the course of 162 games, it's not worth the management risk of switching your entire system over to what we believe would be the best idea. So, for example, if the Padres used our bulk plan last year, they would have gained 10 more wins. We projected them to win 10 more games, while if the Royals used the Rays plan last year, they were projected to win about 3 more wins. Yeah.
So these are the trends we started to see within our calculations. So for our traditional plan, it's more of a basic you're a very balanced staff. So your starters and your bullpen are very kind of equivalent. There's no one overshadowing the other. For the Rays plan, we saw a very unbalanced staff. So either your bullpen was really good and your starters weren't so good, or vice versa, or starters were very strong and bullpen wasn't. And then last, for our bulk plan, we saw that the bullpen the bullpen was substantially better than the starting pitchers. So again, since our plan emphasizes bullpen pitchers more, if you don't have as great as starting pitching, then you can kind of cover them with better, more effective relief pitchers.
So the next step we took was we identified 3 teams that best fit into each plan. So for the traditional plan, we thought the Dodgers were the best fit. If you look at the diagram, you can see it's broken down. It's a simple 5-day rotation with one pitcher pitching the first 5.4 innings, and the relievers or the bullpen covering the remaining 3.6. On the right side, you can see the total number of runs allowed per plan. So if the Dodgers were to use the bulk plan, they would have saved approximately 2.3 runs, but that's only equivalent to 0.2 wins. Now on this next slide, you'll see the best and worst pitchers on the pitching staff. So for the starters, Walker Buehler was their best starting pitcher at a RAPO of 1.47, while their worst starter was Alex Wood, who had a RAPO of 2.42. That 2.42 is very similar to, or very close to the league average. So that was a big reason why the Dodgers ranked first in the National League in average RAPO. Now for the relievers, Dylan Floro gave up 0.16 runs per inning, while their least effective reliever was Daniel Hudson, who gave up 0.48 runs per inning. And their bullpen actually ranked second in the National League. And if you look at the rankings 1 and 2, not only were the Dodgers a very good pitching staff, but they're also balanced, which is what fits the traditional plan. Now the team that best fit the Rays plan was the Indians. It's similar to a traditional rotation, but on days 4 and 5, it started off with a reliever and followed by a starter or a bulk pitcher, and then the remaining 2.6 is covered by the bullpen. On the bottom, you'll see the number of runs given up per plan, and by using the Rays plan, the Indians would have saved approximately 10.3 runs throughout the entire season, which is equivalent to 1.1 more wins. Now, breaking down the Indians, you'll see that their top contributor was Trevor Bauer, who had a RAPO of 1.67, while their worst contributor was Shane Bieber, who had a RAPO of 2.6. But Bieber's 2.6 RAPO was better than league average, and that was a big reason why the Indians ranked first in the American League in average RAPO. Now for their bullpen didn't rank very well. They ranked 9th. Their best reliever or opener was Oliver Perez, who gave up 0.19 runs per inning, while their worst was Adam Simber, who gave up 0.83 runs per inning. This imbalance made them the perfect candidate for the Rays plan.
So the best plan for the best team for the bulk plan is actually the Rays. So we slotted all their pitchers into this and determined that they would save 101.3 runs if they had used this plan because they had a very solid bullpen. So that equals 10.4 wins gained over the course of a season. So their top bulk contributor was Blake Snell. He actually won the Cy Young Award that year. And then Jalen Beeks was their worst. But you can see that their team average RAPO for 5.4, so that's a traditional starter or bulk guy, is 3rd in the American League. And for their relievers, their top opener or relief pitcher contributor was Ryan Stanek with a 0.28 runs per inning, and their worst was Sergio Romo, who had 0.6 runs per inning. And then they were also ranked 3rd in the American League for those bullpen pitchers. So some of the challenges that we identified with implementing this plan is the long-term buy-in with player development. If you are training players in the minor leagues to pitch with a traditional plan, and then you bring them up to the major leagues and have them pitch in this different style, it's going to be very different, and they're not going to pitch very well. Part of the reason is because with a traditional 5-day rotation, there's certain ways that they train pitchers, including the days they take off and the days they throw a bullpen session. And so that whole system has to be completely overhauled. The pitchers must also adapt to this schedule. There is a potential injury risk with having someone who's used to throwing every 5 days start throwing every 3 days. And so that's kind of a mental and physical challenge of having to adjust their routine and their body to that. The teams must adapt that training and create those new training plans that will best fit the bulk plan. And then player ego is also a significant challenge. When we gave this presentation, it was pretty shortly after Madison Bumgarner, a starting pitcher for the San Francisco Giants, came out and said that he would never pitch in a game with an opener in front of him. So kind of more traditional, old school baseball players do not like the idea of having an opener pitch before the traditional starting pitcher would, and they don't like sharing their innings. Traditional baseball mentality is, I'm the starting pitcher, I'm going to go out there and pitch 9 innings or pitch until my arm falls off. And that's just not how the game works today. So we hope that by implementing it in the minor leagues first and bringing it up through the system, that new young players would be more adaptable to this plan.
So for plan implementation, the Rays plan is a start. We've already seen a lot of teams, especially in the 2019 season, adapt an opener role. It might not be as significant as other teams, especially the Rays, who use an opener very frequently. But pretty much every team has experimented with it, so that means it's at least working in some sense. Bullpens are gaining importance. This is huge because you'll see a lot of teams that are trying to contend, especially in the postseason. Towards the trade deadline, they'll be trying to acquire as many bullpen pieces to make it as strong as possible. So when October and the postseason comes, they can shorten games with a stronger bullpen, which means more wins, especially World Series. Bullpen works best with strong bullpens. Like we said, since teams are now kind of focusing on better bullpens, our plan fits best for teams with really strong bullpens, so it's kind of match made in heaven. And again, it's a copycat league, the MLB, so if we could get one team to work and the bulk plan to actually work in an actual organization, that we feel like a lot of teams would follow and then start to adopt and use the bulk plan. So our experiences, it was really cool to represent Washington State on a national level, especially with some of the top analytical schools in the country. We competed against University of Syracuse and New York University, who have some of the top analytical programs that, in the world almost. We also, for our presentation, received really good feedback from our 3 judges, a lot of positive and negative. So if we were to do it again, we know maybe how to approach different topics differently, or just the presentation as a whole, how do we kind of put it together differently. And also, it was also vacation after. We were in Arizona. It was great weather, and spring training was going on. So a couple of us got to, sneak out after the conference and watch a little bit of baseball, which was a really cool experience.
Yeah. So after the competition, the 2 main takeaways. First being, having someone with a more technical background on our team would have been a lot more helpful. So when we were presenting our proposal, we lacked the projections, or some teams had projections for years in advance, which is something that we weren't able to do. And the second, with more time, we could have accounted for injuries or roster transactions. Like Dante mentioned earlier, we picked rosters at the end of the season, but some teams had a pitcher for a specific amount of period, and then that team or that pitcher moved teams. So we could have accounted for all that and made our projections a little bit more accurate.
So the impact of analytics as a whole, sport analytics in the past decade has grown significantly. I'm sure most of you guys have either read or watched Moneyball. That's a good example of it, kind of infiltrating popular culture. Player production equal to 1 MLB win or 1 win above replacement, WAR is the statistic, is worth $9 million in the free agent market. So there's massive amounts of money that are involved with these type of decision making. One example of the impact of analytics this season is that the Tampa Bay Rays payroll is $63 million, while the Red Sox is $229 million. The Rays are on pace to make the playoffs, and the Red Sox are not. Even though the Red Sox are the defending champions, it definitely shows how the Rays have been able to use limited resources to compete on a much larger scale. And kind of on a broader scale, we have to make sure that we are adapting to this industry as a sport management department to be able to accommodate some of the skills that are required, because they're different than traditional sport management curriculum. So that's it. Thank you for listening. It was really an honor to represent Washington State University at this conference and to present to you guys today. We'll take any questions or comments.
I think this new strategy would help avoid pitchers getting more Tommy John surgeries and such.
Yeah, that was definitely one of the ideas coming in, was that, so the main focus was that we noticed that pitchers tend to pitch worse when they have higher pitch counts towards the end of their outing, and that's due to fatigue, which obviously causes injuries. So those kind of go hand in hand, and so we believe that limiting that their pitch counts in each outing will certainly help. And also, in a 5-day traditional rotation, The pitchers are doing a lot of extra workouts and bullpen sessions and throwing on their off days, which is still balls that they're throwing during the season. And with the bulk plan, they would be focusing a lot more of that energy on game situations. So we believe that could also be beneficial because they would be throwing a lot less balls throughout the entire season.
There's also the aspect of, so because pitchers are going to be shorting and pitching in less, like shorter appearances, they're more likely to give it all their all. So like 3 innings, 50 pitches, but a starter might go 80% for 100 pitches, but in a bulk outing, they might go 100% for 50 pitches. I mean, this is like kind of outside our area of expertise, but like that could also stress the elbow or your arm more than going 80% for 100 pitches. So it's like a gray area.
It's hard to know until you try it.
Yeah.
In the model of the Rays model and the traditional model, so starters there's still the starter pitching 5.4 innings.
Yeah.
So how does a team gain wins if it's the Rays model, if the innings are still sort of distributed evenly? Is it like the first time through the order thing, or?
Yeah. So using an opener for the first time through the order, that relief pitcher who got moved to the opener position is statistically doing much better against that top of the order batter.
So how are you able to like factor that in like the model that you guys use?
So it was kind of difficult because we didn't have inning splits for a lot of those relievers for the first inning. So we just took, like, if we were moving a closer to be an opener, then we took their performance in the 9th inning and put it in the first, and then kind of just moved the starter down, which is imperfect, but that's what we had. I mean, we only had a week to do this, so there's a lot of things that, like, if we had a longer period of time, we could have done a lot more with.
How is RAPO significantly different from ERA? It seems like you're just calculating the same thing except not using earned runs.
Yeah.
And not standardizing it to 9 innings.
It's not a brand new stat, it just runs aloud, but we wanted to create one number to make the math easier on those projections, just because, you know, when you're projecting a 3-inning outing or a couple of 3-inning outings back-to-back or 5.4 innings, you know, we just found it easier to just create one statistic for how many runs he's allowing in that average appearance.
So what sort of feedback did you get from your judges?
They were really concerned about, especially with the bulk plan, the limited bullpen, and kind of the lack of flexibility that it allows them. You know, if one of your bulk guys does really bad and you have to pull him early, then you don't have a lot of guys to kind of plug in to replace him. But kind of our counterpoint to that was that, you know, you see that happen now and they still don't have a lot of depth, and that's when you call somebody up from the minors and send down your worst guy and, you know, make roster moves to make it work. I definitely think that one thing that we should have emphasized more is the flexibility between the opener roles and the bullpen pitchers, because in real life, when you're actually doing it, you know, you can switch those guys around. You can have a guy be an opener one day and be your closer the next game. You know, it's very flexible, but to create those projections where they're pitching in the first inning, we had to separate them. And so that was a challenge. Go ahead.
They also want to see a little more risk calculations between adapting the bulk plan in general, because it is definitely, it's not like it's an easy transition to go from a traditional 5-day rotation to all of a sudden throwing all this in. Like Dante said before, there's a lot of training work, you know, behind the scenes work that has to be implemented into the organization beforehand to actually do that. So they want to see a little more like number wise of how much of a difficulty it would be to transition to our plan.
There was also the concern of like players buying in, like Dante mentioned earlier with Madison Bumgarner. There's a lot of players or pitchers who really don't like the opener, and like Madison Bumgarner, he absolutely hates it. So there's also that part, and they also, so there's that. But we were the only team with a creative plan. All the other proposals we listened to, they had just like a typical opener, like a closer pitching the first inning, but we were the only team that strayed away from that. If that makes sense. So the judges like that as well.
Seeing as like this is the worst year for bullpen ERAs, I'm pretty sure ever, if not in a long time. Like, how would that change your model, knowing that like since the relievers have been more overworked this year and it's showed in their ERA like regression?
Yeah, I mean, we built this based on the 2018 season, which was different. But still, I mean, when you look at a starting pitcher today and you look at their pitch count splits, every 25 pitches they're getting significantly worse. And so our target was to minimize that. And even if you have a bullpen pitcher who, bullpens might not be as good as they have been historically, but if you take that guy and plug him in for an inning here and or 2 innings there, and you are able to eliminate that pitch 50 through 75 or 75 plus split on those starting pitchers, then it'll make a big impact still.
So can you explain to me why you said that if you had more time, you could have done better? Obviously, you
Yeah.
you probably could have done better. But isn't that all the teams have 5 a week to do? Like yours at University of Syracuse, isn't they all have 5 days a week, whatever, to do the same thing?
Yeah, I think.
Yes, but also all those teams, especially Syracuse and New York grad students, the top schools, they had a lot of advisors. Like nothing in the rules says that you can't have, it has to be all undergraduate work. It can be a whole team, a whole program thing.
So it's not really
done for.
time.
Well, time, of course, I mean, we have the bulk plan, we could develop it in a month or even, it could be a 5-year kind of projection that we could develop the model even to be stronger.
But what I'm saying is every team has the same
Yeah.
amount of time for preparing.
So with the
It's not that
resources,
you're short shifted.
so with the resources available to us, we felt that we could have done better with a lot more time. A lot of the other teams had more resources to practice ahead of time, more technical background and statistical modeling. I've learned a lot since making this presentation about how we could collect that same data more efficiently and faster to give us more time. And surely a lot of those other teams had those skills, which we didn't at the time.
So really time is not a factor.
Well, the timing is a factor because of where our skill set was at.
We weren't able to use our time the most efficiently, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
We also came into this not 100% knowing what we were getting into while we were.
Well, no, it's not a criticism.
Yeah.
I'm just
No,
trying
yeah,
to understand
absolutely.
that
Yeah.
you say you have more time. Then it's thinking like, did the other team have more time?
No, they didn't.
Right?
But they've also been competing at this conference for 4 or 5 years. They kind of had an idea of what was to come for this week. Well, I don't know about for all of them, but during the week before spring break, I got a whole bunch of tests, so I can't just focus all of my time straight into this. So I don't know.
And man hours per person, right?
Yeah.
There's only 4 of you, and that was part of your point. It's like some of those teams may have been larger.
Mhm.
Well, Syracuse alone as a program, they brought 5 different teams. So I want to say they had a complete total,
Yeah.
they had a complete total group of almost 40 people, including advisors and
Yeah.
support.
I mean, your numbers, guys, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, if you, the man hour, 5 days times however many people, that's only so many hours.
Yeah.
If you got more people, you got more hours. So
Exactly.
Time is a thing.
Yeah. And we're really proud of the fact that we kind of came in without knowing what to expect. A lot of the teams that you see who won are teams that win consistently. So, not having any faculty travel with us and not really having any background of what to actually expect and just going there and doing it was a really valuable experience. And I think we feel that we almost got more out of it that way, just trying to figure it out as we went. And that was a really great experience.
So who's going this year?
I'm attending the conference, but since I walk in December and hopefully we'll be with an MLB team at that point, then I won't be participating in the competition.
I'm considering it. I want to see how this semester finishes first.
I've also considered it, but I'm leaning towards the no side because this generally doesn't have any major correlation to what I'm studying.
You should shift major.
I'm also considering it too. I thought it was a very valuable, not even a competition, but listening to speakers like Dante will do at the conference. If you're a baseball fan, you pretty much have to be at this because it's where baseball is heading and where it will head in the next 50 years. So.
Thank you for putting yourselves out there, for being trailblazers. It's impressive. That in itself, not to mention the time and the information we thank you for representing WSU. Would be the first. That's not the easy task.
Thank you.
It was really fun. I mean, even the complaints we may have set up here before, like just 4 of us and like Ed, the extension, just like grinding out hours of working together, and it's about baseball. I mean, we all do this because we have a passion in it. So it was like fun homework, but it was like really fun also to get to know each other and experience. Went to a different state as 4 guys, just on a mission. So
Yeah.
it was really fun in that way.
Too bad we didn't have a film crew with you, documentary. That would have
Yeah,
been
we could have.
entertaining.
It's a vlog,
Media
maybe.
journalism major.
Maybe.
Just
I
saying.
should have been on that. I'm
just
sorry.
saying,
Maybe I should have been on
Maybe
that.
it applies to engineering somehow. We'll find a way.
There was a couple speakers there that were more on like the physics side of baseball, so I did get a little piece out of it there.
What
Yeah.
did you say? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, including a speaker actually talking about WSU. We didn't even know that they were going to be there, but they were talking about our program and on the physics side and what they've done with testing StatCast, which is the computer program and radar system that they use to measure like batted balls and pitches and stuff in Major League Baseball. And so there was actually a group from WSU who went around to all of the Major League ballparks and tested with other ways of measuring those statistics, how accurate StatCast was. So that was really cool to hear.
If you guys want to go to the bat lab, I'll give you the contact information.
Yeah, there you go.
What have you learned from other teams?
For at least Syracuse, I remember they had people from the actual SABR organization come to their school and guest speak beforehand the conference. I remember one of them said that. Also, a couple of teams, SABR has, I think, the spring one we went to, but they also have a winter conference, I believe.
Yeah.
And they also have a case competition there. So a lot of it was just experience. Like most of the teams or universities that were there had been sending teams for X amount of years, even since the conference had started. So, it's more of a experience thing, I think, that we've learned.
Yeah, personally for me, so we got to listen to one Syracuse team that presented after us. You couldn't watch any presentations until after you went, and so we went third out of fourth in our room. So we watched the Syracuse team that actually ended up winning our room, and then we also watched Washington University from St. Louis, and they won the entire thing, so they presented to the whole conference. And that was eye-opening to me because I realized that I needed to kind of gain more technical skills to enter this field. I feel pretty strong about my knowledge about baseball, but I didn't really know how to code. And so that's something that I've been working on, taking extra classes as much as I can while I'm still here, and doing extra things on my own to kind of catch up. And so that was really valuable to me because as I look to apply for internships for after I graduate in December, having that skill set already in place is going to save me a lot of heartbreak of not even being qualified for the stuff I want.
And indeed, if I remember correctly, teams that participated in this competition in previous years, they were from schools like Brown, Harvard, and so on.
Yeah.
So they weren't necessarily large enrollment public schools, and even students or participants did not necessarily come all from sport management programs. So again, it's what you said regarding, it doesn't relate, Reagan, what you said regarding, not relating to my field. Well, it's make it relate to your field,
Yeah.
or figure out, carve out a niche for yourself.
Yeah.
So we try to talk to as many other teams as we could and just kind of listen to what their plans were and also just kind of learn more about them. The only team I remember talking to that was actually sport management majors was Oklahoma State. All of the other ones were like data analytics or like computer science majors, statistics, economics. And so I felt proud as a sport management student that, there wasn't a lot of people representing that field, and that even though we didn't win our room, we don't know how we placed it, didn't tell anybody, but we felt like we did well. We did what we came to do, so.